Memphis, Tennessee. A rain-drenched December in 1851. Near the banks of the Mississippi, on an auction block, an event unfolded that would shadow the city's mercantile aristocracy for generations. It centered on a single enslaved man, young, whose very physique contradicted every established norm of the trade. He commanded a price so staggering it ignited a series of consequences no one foresaw. In half a year, 3 of Memphis's most affluent dynasties lay in ruins. Within the year, the purchaser disappeared utterly, leaving behind nothing but enigmatic diary pages hinting he had stumbled upon a truth far more perilous than mere business. The newspaper archives from that era contain strange silences, missing weeks, as though evidence of the real events had been meticulously scrubbed away. Why was this particular man deemed so precious that fortunes and reputations were risked to own him? What hidden truths did his sale contain that powerful clans wished expunged from memory? Before we delve deeper into the account whispered among intimates as the Memphis Enigma, ensure you subscribe to The Last Laugh and tap that notification bell. What you'll learn may well unsettle everything you assume about the Antebellum South. And leave a comment telling us which state or city you're listening from. We cherish hearing from our community across the nation. This mystery's roots lie not in the auction itself, but in the events that delivered this young man to Memphis. By the spring of 1851, the city pulsed with commercial fervor. Having recently overtaken Louisville in cotton exports, its position on the Mississippi made it the vital core of the Western slave trade. Front Street was lined with auction houses like temples to wealth, their white columns bright under the southern sun, their interiors echoing with recited prices and the movement of human chattel. 3 families stood paramount within this elite sphere. The Harringtons commanded the grandest cotton warehouses along the river. Edmund Harrington, patriarch and scion of Virginia aristocracy, had amassed his wealth through calculated marriages and pitiless tactics that bankrupted rivals. His son, Charles, aged 32, served as the public emblem, a handsome man who wore his privilege as naturally as his skin, each gesture designed to underscore the lower station of others. The Daltons had ascended from humbler origins. Jacob Dalton arrived in Memphis 15 years prior with only a sharp facility for numbers and relentless determination. He had made himself the city's foremost slave broker, the man who could secure any laborer a plantation owner required. His discretion made him essential to families who preferred their dealings absent from public ledgers. The third power, the Cavendishs, brought old Charleston wealth. Richard Cavendish had moved to Memphis in 1847, importing not just capital but also ties to New Orleans shipping magnates and New York bankers. His wife, Victoria, hosted the city's most exclusive salons, gatherings where transactions were sealed over imported wine and political alliances forged behind closed doors. These 3 dynasties coexisted in a state of courteous competition. Their rivalries, veiled by social decorum, simmered beneath a polished surface. Each sought an edge, each hunted for the investment or possession that would secure their supremacy. Into this climate, whispers began in early November 1851. A trader named Ambrose Fletcher, known for operating in the Carolinas and Georgia, had come to Memphis with an unusual commodity. Fletcher was not favored among his peers. He worked alone, shunned established auction houses, and had a reputation for dealing in what others termed specialty merchandise, enslaved individuals with particular traits that fetched premium prices from specific clients. Fletcher took rooms at a modest Madison Avenue boarding house, far from the hotels favored by visiting merchants. He advertised nothing, conducted no business at public venues, and spoke to no one of what he had brought. In a trade built on publicity, this silence became its own narrative. Speculation began in the gentlemen's clubs. Talk circulated of a man of arresting appearance, not merely handsome, but possessing a beauty so profound it left seasoned men fumbling for words. The rumors acquired a mythic tone. Mentions of features akin to sculpted marble, eyes holding a disquieting intelligence, a carriage that implied nobility, not bondage. Charles Harrington first heard the tale during a card game at the Memphis Club. The source, a tobacco merchant named William Drexler, claimed to have glimpsed the slave briefly near the riverfront. Drexler described being so transfixed by the man's look that he halted abruptly, causing another walker to collide with him. 20 years in this business, Drexler had murmured, his voice low. Thousands seen. Nothing prepared me. It wasn't just the face, Harrington. It was something more. A way of moving, of bearing himself despite the chains. As if he understood something the rest of us did not. Charles dismissed it as bourbon-fueled exaggeration, yet the description lingered. His father had lately complained of the household staff's lack of refinement. A slave of exceptional grace, properly trained, could be a living emblem of status, a conversation piece for dinners, a visible testament to the family's unique power of acquisition. He made inquiries. Fletcher, he learned, planned to depart Memphis within the week, having apparently found no buyers for his extraordinary wares. The quoted price, $3,000, was unheard of. A prime field hand might fetch $1,500. An educated house servant, perhaps $2,000. $3,000 suggested either madness or something genuinely unparalleled. On a bleak afternoon in late November, Charles arranged a private viewing. Fletcher received him in his boarding house room, a confined space smelling of lamp oil and river damp. The trader, a thin man in his 50s with skin weathered by decades of travel, possessed a calculating gaze that Charles found immediately disquieting. "I value discretion, Mr. Harrington," Fletcher said, indicating a chair. "Your approach through proper channels speaks well." "I understand you have something unusual," Charles replied, maintaining a businesslike tone despite his curiosity. "I am here to judge if the tales warrant the price." Fletcher smiled thinly. "The price is fixed. I do not bargain, nor accept promises. 3,000 in gold or bank draft. No exceptions." "Then show me what justifies such certainty." Fletcher walked to a connecting door and knocked 3 times. The door opened, and Charles Harrington beheld the enslaved man who would alter his destiny. The young man who entered stood perhaps 6 feet tall, slender yet well-proportioned. His skin held the hue of sun-touched honey, suggesting mixed ancestry, common in the trade, yet here combined into something Charles had never witnessed. The face possessed a mathematical symmetry, high cheekbones, a strong jaw, and unusual grey-green eyes that seemed to shift in the lamplight. But it was more than physical beauty. He moved with a fluid grace implying education and training far removed from the brutalities shaping most of the enslaved. He wore simple, clean but worn cotton trousers and a white shirt. Charles noted the absence of chains, the lack of visible marks. The young man stood quietly, hands clasped loosely, gaze directed at the floor in expected submission. Yet something in his bearing suggested this submission was performed, a role played for an audience. "His name is Marcus," Fletcher said quietly. 23 years. Born in Virginia, educated in a manner I am not at liberty to detail. Reads and writes fluently in English and French. Trained in household management, bookkeeping, and music. Never worked a field, never endured harsh labor. His skin is unmarked, his health perfect. Charles circled slowly, inspecting him as one would a sculpture. Marcus remained motionless, yet Charles felt a palpable awareness emanating from him, as if every nerve tracked his movement. "Show me your hands," Charles commanded. Marcus raised his hands, palms up. The fingers were long, uncalloused, nails neatly trimmed. Certainly no field worker's hands. They were the hands of someone accustomed to delicate objects, perhaps musical instruments or fine papers. "Look at me." Marcus raised his eyes, and Charles felt an inexplicable jolt of recognition, though he had never seen this face before. The eyes held intelligence, yes, but also something else, a weariness, or perhaps calculation. For an instant, Charles had the disquieting sensation that he was the one being assessed. "Why hasn't he sold?" Charles asked Fletcher, breaking his gaze. "If he is all you claim, someone should have purchased him immediately." Fletcher's expression darkened slightly. "The men here lack vision. They see a comely face and assume he's been kept as a pleasure slave. That is damaged. They are mistaken. Their prejudice is your opportunity. You may acquire what they were too foolish to grasp. What is his history? I must know what I am buying." "His history is complex. He was raised in a household that valued education, employed for years as a private secretary. The family encountered financial ruin and liquidated assets. I acquired him legitimately, with full documentation. All is legal and transferable. Something in Fletcher's tone hinted at omissions, at details deliberately withheld. Charles considered pressing, but his mind was already racing ahead. The Daltons had recently acquired twin sisters for exotic display at their dinners. The Cavendishs kept an enslaved pianist for salon entertainment. But this was different. A male slave of such striking mien and evident refinement would make Charles the envy of Memphis society. I will require documentation, Charles said. Proof of ownership, transfer papers, all legal necessities. Naturally, everything is prepared. The question is whether you are prepared to meet my price. Charles studied Marcus once more. The young man had returned his gaze to the floor, posture unchanged. Yet Charles sensed a tension within him, like a coiled spring awaiting release. What thoughts moved behind those unusual eyes? What did he make of this transaction, of being examined like livestock? The question surprised Charles. He had bought and sold dozens over the years without a thought to their inner lives. 3,000, Charles said finally. I will have the bank draft prepared. We complete the transaction tomorrow at my attorney's office. Fletcher nodded, satisfaction evident. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Bring the draft, I shall bring the papers. You've made a wise decision, Mr. Harrington. Marcus will serve you well. Leaving the boarding house, Charles felt a peculiar blend of excitement and disquiet. He had just committed to the largest single purchase of his life without his father's counsel. Edmund Harrington would be furious initially, but upon seeing Marcus, upon understanding the social advantage, his anger would turn to approval. Charles was certain. What Charles could not know, walking through Memphis's darkening streets, was that he had just set in motion a sequence that would devastate not only his own family, but 2 others. The enslaved man he had agreed to purchase carried a secret far more dangerous than beauty. The transfer occurred as arranged. Charles arrived at his attorney's office with a draft on the Memphis Trust Bank. Fletcher produced seemingly legitimate papers, a bill of sale from a Virginia estate, transferred documents, and a letter attesting to Marcus's skills and character, signed by Mrs. Eleanor Stratton of Richmond. The attorney, a meticulous man named Horace Pembroke, examined everything. He had handled slave transactions for the Harringtons for years. Yet even he seemed slightly unnerved by Fletcher's intense scrutiny during the review. All appears in order, Pembroke finally announced. Provenance is clear, documentation legally sufficient. Mr. Harrington, your signature here makes Marcus your legal property. Charles signed without pause. Fletcher countersigned. Money and papers exchanged hands. Marcus, standing silently throughout, showed no reaction to the change of ownership. His face remained carefully neutral, eyes fixed on middle distance, breathing steady. A word of advice, Fletcher said as he prepared to leave, hand on the door. Marcus requires particular handling. He is not like the others. Treat him poorly and you will find him difficult. Treat him with a measure of respect, not as an equal, you understand, but with acknowledgement of his capabilities, and he will exceed expectations. I know how to manage my property, Charles replied stiffly. Of course. I am sure you do. Fletcher tipped his hat and departed, boarding a riverboat for New Orleans that same afternoon. He would never return to Memphis, and attempts to contact him in subsequent months proved futile. Ambrose Fletcher had vanished from the trade entirely. Charles brought Marcus to the Harrington estate that evening. The family's Greek Revival mansion on Union Avenue, with its 6 white columns and broad portico, was designed to intimidate, to declare wealth before a word was spoken. Edmund's reaction surpassed Charles's expectations. Prepared to rage at his son's impulsive expenditure, the elder Harrington fell silent when Marcus was presented in the main parlor. Edmund circled him, his expression shifting from anger to fascination to unease. Extraordinary, Edmund murmured. Charles, you may have demonstrated business sense for once. This is unlike anything I have seen. Charles felt a surge of pride. I thought he might serve as your personal secretary, handle correspondence, manage your calendar, attend at dinners. Imagine the impression on our guests. Indeed. Edmund turned to Marcus. Can you read complex documents? Legal papers, financial statements? Yes, sir, Marcus replied, his voice cultured and resonant. I have handled such materials extensively in prior service. We shall test that tomorrow. Charles, quarter him in the East Wing, the room adjoining my study. I want him readily available. The decision to place Marcus so near the family's private quarters stirred unease among the household staff. The Harringtons kept 16 enslaved people, kitchen workers, field hands for their outside property, house servants, a coachman. All were quartered in the basement or separate outbuildings. Giving this newcomer a room in the East Wing, steps from Edmund's study and down the hall from Charles's bedroom, conferred a status without precedent. The head housekeeper, Bess, who had served the family for 20 years, voiced her concern that first evening. It ain't right, she said bluntly. Putting him up there with the family. The others are already talking. They don't know what to make of him. He is not like the others, Charles replied. He is educated, refined. Father wants him close for business. Bess shook her head but said no more. She had learned long ago that objecting too strenuously to the Harringtons' decisions led nowhere good. Marcus adapted with remarkable speed. Within days, he had mastered Edmund's schedule, organized years of disordered correspondence, and demonstrated an ability to anticipate needs before they were voiced. He moved through the house with quiet efficiency, present when required, never intrusive. At dinner parties, he served with a grace that made other servants seem clumsy, and guests invariably remarked on his appearance. Where on earth did you find him? Mrs. Sarah Dalton asked during a dinner 2 weeks after Marcus's arrival, unable to look away. He is absolutely magnificent. A fortunate acquisition, Edmund replied, clearly pleased. One must know where to look for quality. Victoria Cavendish, seated across the table, watched Marcus with narrowed eyes. He seems almost too refined for bondage. With proper attire, one might mistake him for a gentleman. Appearances can be cultivated, Edmund said smoothly. Training produces remarkable results when applied to suitable material. Yet privately, Edmund shared some of Victoria's disquiet. Marcus's refinement seemed innate, not taught. His movements, speech, even the way he held a book, suggested someone raised with privilege, not someone taught to mimic it. Where had Fletcher truly acquired him? Who was Mrs. Eleanor Stratton, and why would such a person own a slave like Marcus? Edmund began making discreet inquiries. He wrote to contacts in Richmond asking after the Stratton family and any recent slave sales. The replies, arriving weeks later, deepened the mystery. No one knew of a Mrs. Eleanor Stratton. The signature appeared genuine, the handwriting consistent, but the person herself seemed absent from Richmond's social registry. Meanwhile, Charles found himself increasingly fascinated by Marcus in ways that troubled him. It was not merely the young man's appearance, though that remained startling. It was the intelligence behind those grey-green eyes, the sense that Marcus observed and understood far more than he revealed. Charles began inventing reasons to interact, asking questions about his past that Marcus answered with careful vagueness. Where did you learn French? Charles asked one afternoon, finding Marcus reading a French novel in his room. My previous employer valued languages, Marcus replied, tone neutral. I was taught as a child. That's unusual. Most holders don't educate their property so extensively. My situation was unusual. In what way? Marcus hesitated. A flicker of something, pain, anger, crossed his face before his expression reset to careful neutrality. Perhaps it is better left in the past, Mr. Harrington. But Charles could not leave it. He found himself thinking of Marcus at odd hours, wondering about the life that had shaped such a person. Had he known freedom? Had he been torn from some better circumstance? The questions felt dangerous, implying a humanity in Marcus that Charles had been raised to deny in the enslaved. The other household slaves kept a cautious distance. They recognized Marcus's elevated status but sensed something unsettling about him. He watches everything, Bess confided to the cook. Sees everything. Never says much, but you can tell his thinking. I swear, Sometimes I catch him looking at Mr. Edmund or Mr. Charles with something in his eyes, something that ain't fear, that's for certain. The cook, Judith, nodded agreement. That man's got secrets. Mark my words, secrets we probably don't want to know. They were more correct than they knew. On a cold evening in early January 1852, some 6 weeks after Marcus's arrival, Jacob Dalton paid an unexpected visit. He arrived without notice, his carriage pulling up just after dinner. Edmund received him in the study, curious about the unusual call. Dalton, a stout man with a florid face and intense eyes, was agitated, declining brandy and coming straight to the point. I want to buy your new slave. Marcus. Name your price. Edmund blinked. He is not for sale, Jacob. I just acquired him. I'll give you 5,000. Nearly double what you paid. How do you even know what I paid? Dalton waved dismissively. I make it my business. 5,000, Edmund. Think on it. An extraordinary profit for 6 weeks. The answer is no. Marcus has proven invaluable. He is more useful than 5,000. Dalton's face reddened further. 6, then. That is my final offer. Jacob, even were I inclined, which I am not, why pay such an absurd price? What possible use could he be to justify it? Dalton stared for a long moment. Then, quieter, he said, you don't understand what you have in your house, do you? You think he's just a handsome slave with some education. There's something else about him. Something that could be valuable in the right circumstances. What are you talking about? I've made inquiries about Fletcher. Do you know what he specialized in, Edmund? Not regular field hands. He dealt in slaves with specific attributes for specific buyers, private collectors, shall we say. People paying extraordinary sums for extraordinary merchandise. Edmund felt a chill. What are you implying? I'm stating facts. Fletcher vanished after your purchase. No trace. That's suspicious. And the documentation, have you verified it? Traced it to its source? My attorney examined the papers. Papers can be forged. Signatures copied. I'd wager if you investigate, you'll find inconsistencies. Questions without answers. Edmund's unease deepened. Even if true, it doesn't explain your interest. What do you know that I don't? Dalton leaned forward, voice dropping to a near whisper. 3 days ago, Richard Cavendish approached me with a proposition. He wanted me to arrange stealing Marcus from you. Offered 2,000 just to facilitate, another 3 once the slave was in his possession. I refused, of course, I'm a businessman, not a thief. But it tells you something about what Cavendish thinks that young man is worth. Edmund sat back, mind racing. Why would Richard want him so badly? That's what I've tried to determine. I've asked questions through my network, learned interesting things, Edmund. Things suggesting Marcus might not be who Fletcher claimed. Explain. There are rumors, whispers, nothing confirmed, that a certain Virginia family lost a son about 2 years back. Disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The family claimed he'd run off, but there were irregularities. This son was educated, cultured, known for striking looks. The family refuses all discussion, which is itself interesting. But here's what's truly intriguing, the family name was Thornton. Eleanor Thornton was the mother. Not Stratton. Thornton. The similarity struck Edmund immediately. A change of a few letters. Exactly. Now, I can't prove Marcus is that missing son. I can't even prove such a son existed, the family has suppressed information effectively. But if he were, Edmund, if Marcus is actually a freeborn man illegally enslaved, do you understand what that means? Edmund understood perfectly. It meant Marcus's enslavement was not just illegal but criminal. It meant Fletcher had trafficked a free person. It meant Edmund had unknowingly participated in that crime by purchasing him. The legal and social ramifications would be catastrophic. The Harrington name would be ruined. This is speculation, Edmund said firmly, though his voice wavered. You have no proof. I have enough to make both Cavendish and myself willing to pay extraordinary sums. Enough to travel here on a cold night to make this offer. Think, Edmund. 6,000. Take it. Let me handle whatever complications arise from his past, and you wash your hands of it. Edmund studied him. Dalton was a skilled negotiator, expert at reading and exploiting weakness. Was this an elaborate tactic to acquire Marcus at a profit, or was there substance to the claims? I need time to consider, Edmund said finally. Give me 3 days to investigate. If I find evidence supporting your claims, we'll discuss terms. Dalton stood, clearly unhappy but recognizing he'd pushed as far as he could. 3 days, Edmund. But I warn you, Cavendish won't wait forever. If he can't buy Marcus legally, he might resort to other methods. After Dalton left, Edmund sat alone, staring into the fire. His mind churned with troubling possibilities. Finally, he rang for Marcus. The young man appeared within minutes, composed and attentive. You called for me, sir. Edmund studied him with new eyes, searching for deception or hidden identity. Marcus bore the scrutiny calmly, neither defiant nor submissive, simply waiting. Tell me the truth, Edmund said quietly. Who are you, really? Not the history Fletcher gave. The truth. Something flickered across Marcus's face, surprise, perhaps relief. Then it vanished, replaced by his usual careful neutrality. What truth would you like to hear, Mr. Harrington? The truth of what I was, or the truth of what I've become? Both. Marcus was silent a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a new weight, as if something genuine were finally emerging. I was born free in Virginia, as Fletcher's papers claim. I received an education appropriate to my station. I had prospects, a future. Then circumstances changed in ways I couldn't control. I found myself in a situation no refinement could rescue me from. Fletcher bought me from people with no legal right to sell me. He knew this. He didn't care. He saw profit in another's tragedy and took it. The Thornton family, Edmund said. Marcus's eyes widened slightly. You've been making inquiries. Jacob Dalton was just here. He told me things. Are you Eleanor Thornton's son? I was. The simple past tense carried enormous weight. Edmund felt his world tilt. He had spent $3,000 on a freeborn man. Had enslaved someone illegally. Had committed a crime that could destroy his family. Why didn't you say anything? Edmund demanded, anger rising. Why not protest when Fletcher sold you? Why not speak at the attorney's office? Marcus's expression hardened. And say what? Who would have believed me? A man in chains claiming to be freeborn. Fletcher had documents, signatures, seemingly legitimate papers. I had nothing but my word. Would your attorney have sided with me over Fletcher's documentation? Would you? Edmund had no answer. Marcus was right. No one would have believed him. The law would have sided with the documentation every time. If you're freeborn, Edmund said slowly, then you have rights. I could. I should arrange your release. Return you to your family. My family is the reason I'm here, Marcus said bitterly. Do you think I was kidnapped off the street? My own mother sold me, Mr. Harrington. She fabricated the documentation, created the false history, and sold me to Fletcher to settle family debts. The Thornton name was worth more to her than her son. So forgive me if I don't share your optimism about returning home. The revelation stunned Edmund. He'd heard distant rumors of such things, desperate families selling mixed-race children, but never as immediate reality. Why tell me this now? Because Dalton is right to warn you about Cavendish. Richard Cavendish knows who I am. He knows what I represent. And he wants me not as a slave, but as leverage against my family. The Thorntons may have disowned me, but they still fear exposure. Cavendish has been trying to blackmail them for months. If he acquires me, he'll use me to extract far more than 6,000 from my mother. He'll bleed the Thornton fortune dry, then expose the scandal anyway, for the pleasure of destroying them. Edmund's mind reeled. How do you know this? Because I'm not deaf. I hear conversations in this house. I observe visitors. I've pieced together information from overheard fragments. Cavendish has been planning this. Dalton's offer tonight wasn't generosity, it was an attempt to outmaneuver Cavendish before Cavendish moves. Then what should I do? Marcus smiled, but without humor. That depends on what kind of man you are. You could sell me to Dalton and profit. You could sell me to Cavendish and profit more, though at greater moral cost. Or you could do something neither expects, you could help me disappear. The suggestion hung in the air. Edmund stared, seeing not a slave but a young man trapped by circumstances, fighting to survive with whatever tools remained. If I help you, Edmund said slowly, I make enemies of both Dalton and Cavendish. They'll see it as betrayal. No, they won't. But if you sell me to either, you'll never know peace. The truth will emerge eventually. It always does. And you'll be implicated in a scandal destroying your family's reputation as surely as mine. If I disappear, you can claim ignorance. Say I ran away, that you were as deceived by Fletcher as anyone. Edmund considered. Each path held risk. Each choice carried consequence. But Marcus was right about one thing, truth had a way of surfacing. Better to act now while he retained some control than wait for disaster. 3 days, Edmund said finally. That's what I told Dalton. In 3 days, you'll disappear. I'll provide money and documents to help you north. In return, you never contact me again. Never reveal what you know of this family. Never speak of your time here. Agreed? Agreed. And Marcus, or whatever your real name is. Marcus is my real name. Marcus Thornton. Whatever else was taken, they couldn't take that. Marcus, then. If I discover you've betrayed this confidence, if you try to use what you know against me, I'll spend every resource hunting you down. Do we understand? Perfectly. They shook hands, master and enslaved, making a deal that upended everything such a relationship was meant to represent. Edmund felt the firmness of Marcus's grip, an equal strength meeting his own, and realized this was perhaps their first truly honest interaction. Neither man could have predicted this agreement would lead not to disappearance, but to catastrophe. Because others were watching, with plans of their own. And in Memphis in 1852, keeping secrets proved far more difficult than either imagined.